Welcome to Extreme Conflict Makeover. It's extreme. This week's conflict, the 2009 Iranian elections. So let's take a look. In June 2009, the presidential election took place between Ahmadinejad and Mousavi. The process seemed to be going well, but then suddenly everything changed for the worse, and the country found itself in turmoil. The results were announced before the polls closed. The government shut down texting in the country. Security and armed forces flooded the street and surrounded election headquarters. National television broadcasted pre-recorded clips encouraging the Iranian people to rally around and support the winner, Ahmadinejad. Mousavi was told he had won the election, but Ahmadinejad was publicly announced as the winner. In terms of proof and accountability, the government provided no official breakdown of voting results by province, which would have been factual evidence to support the outcome. Furthermore, the voting patterns announced by the government were identical throughout the country, which is statistically impossible. Less than 24 hours later, Ayatollah Khomeini gave his final word and publicly announced Ahmadinejad as the winner, which in Iran confirms the election process officially complete. Suddenly all cell phones, Facebook, and other social network sites were blocked. This strange and highly orchestrated series of events appeared on the surface to be a classic coup, where an outside group tries to overthrow the ruling elite. However, this was a coup of the ruling elite against its own people. The citizens of Iran, particularly the youth, took to the streets in outraged protest. Although the military detained a lot of these protesters, people still found ways to get around the government blockades to use the social networking sites to tell the world what was going on. The violence escalated as the military used physical force, including brutal beatings and even rape to silence its protesters. The infamous video of a young girl protesting, Nida, getting shot by the military became the face of the revolution. This conflict is still raging today. As recently as November 20th, the UN voted on a resolution to condemn the Islamic Republic of Iran for serious, ongoing, and recurring human rights violations. The conflict is in desperate need of a makeover because the people of Iran have lost faith in their democracy. And once the people lose faith in their government, the government loses all accountability, making human rights violations all the more likely and all the more desperate. The people of Iran are no longer facing one isolated conflict, but rather unleashing the wrath of 30 years of pent-up aggression and oppression. What we see now is a culminating episode of a 30-year-long epicenter of a problem. Ma, that sounds like a pretty big conflict. Let's see what we have in store.
Well, in this specific case, we're going to start out with some short-term conflict transformation, such as a revote with a third-party oversight to avoid further accusations of corruption. In doing so, we should be able to really get down to the nuts and bolts of this incident and restore the idea of government accountability. But you've always got to have a plan B. So there are definitely some economic strategies we could try to implement. Citizens are encouraged to pull money out of the bank to eliminate possibilities of investment and stifle the workings of a major government institution. We'll unionize the workers and hold strikes against the current regime in order to shut down the economy. And since the export of oil is a major source of government funding, it's especially important for the workers in the oil industry to halt operations until the demands of the Iranian people are met. The government has to respond if the economy shuts down. According to the president of the National Iranian American Council, exogenous forces should not interfere with these protests. Trita Parsi, the president, said they should rather publicly condemn the human rights violations occurring there at this time.
Hey, let me just jump in here for a second, Jim.
Yes, Baba Steve.
We would also like to form an alliance with the besieged military and urge them to disarm. If the people in the military could align their goal of a peaceful and just Iran, the current corrupt government would have no means of enforcing their rule. We have seen this tactic successfully implemented in the outpour movement in Serbia. This is of particular significance because once this alliance has been formed, the current government removed, the people can then hopefully take steps towards building a less militaristic society.
The next part of this transformation would involve shutting down the universities for a week of protests. This would be particularly effective, as the protests that have already taken place have garnered a lot of international attention via the Twitter revolution. Appealing to the third party, like the protesters did in Serbia through the outpour movement, will raise awareness and increase international pressure to stop the injustice. Shutting down the school system would serve as a symbolic signal to the government that the youth of Iran takes this issue very seriously.
Finally, as a symbolic gesture, we would like to encourage women to pour into the streets and remove the veils as a symbol of women's liberation. It is our intention in making over this conflict to also create a better circumstance for the women of Iran. In doing so, they may stand up against the government's oppression and also affirm their equal role as citizens and human beings.
Now, once this makeover is complete, we will see the restoration of human rights to the Iranian people. These are just some of the short-term goals that a handyman can do, but with the support of the people, they can build something great.